Michael Flynn have on the president.
That is the central one. Michael Isikoff, thanks for being with me.
Sure enough.
Joining me now, MSNBC contributor, former FBI double agent Naveed Jamali, and MSNBC terrorism analyst Malcolm Nance. And so there's two striking things about the story to me that seem clarifying. And again, what we know is what Peter Smith told this reporter, which is on the record, right? I mean, he was digging this dirt. He was basically thinking to himself, maybe we can expose Hillary Clinton having lied about what was personal and what was official in those emails she deleted. And the Russian hackers have it because, you know, they got it to the DNC, right? What it made me think was, well, maybe other people had that idea. And maybe people like the President of the United States, who explicitly said it, or people in his circle had that idea.
Well, I felt that his July 27th statement of Russia, if you're listening, please release Hillary Clinton's 30,000 emails.
Which is a profoundly bizarre statement that he then reiterates in an interview with Katie Scher.
But it appears that it was informed, maybe in part by this. There may have been multiple track teams trying to run this down. But there's an interesting little fact I wrote in that book, my book, Plot to Hack America. In April, Judge Napolitano of Fox News talked on air about Russia having an argument at the highest levels of the Kremlin because they had hacked Hillary Clinton's 30,000 emails and were debating releasing them. And I thought from April to July, that conversation boinged around between, you know, Dirty Tricks political operative and Dirty Tricks political operative went to Stone, but I thought it was all over Stone's camp. It appears that there were multiple people that were looking for that.
But
now we have Flynn named by maybe Russian cyber militias, Russian criminal militia hackers, or even Russian intelligence hackers as having been a nexus to get this information.
As a possible intermediary. We should say these are unnamed intelligence reports. We can't verify them,
obviously. Extrapolate where they...
But, and Naveed, this also goes to something we've been talking about, because to me there's so much reporting about the sort of degrees to which there are these Russia connections. There's been this bizarre pattern of deception, frankly, about contact with the Russians. But this very simple idea that maybe people were just thought, oh, we can expose Hillary Clinton. They got into the DNC server. Maybe they got in there. Maybe we should figure out if we could go talk to them about getting those emails. That's a much clearer set of a much kind of clearer causal theory than anything that has been on the table previously.
No, I completely agree with you, Chris. I mean, this isn't opaque to me, and I think as Malcolm can attest to, look, in the intelligence world, most people, you sometimes wear a uniform. And I think when you start looking in this, you're going to find connections that are not so clear. When it comes to planning an intelligence operation, there is obviously the mission, but then there's the second part of it, which is protecting attribution. So you always want to have this compartmentalization. You always want to have this level of non-attribution. And what we're seeing here, Chris, is exactly how that works out. You have hackers that potentially could be connected to Russia, may not be. And the trail on one level, from an evidentiary standpoint, may be murky, but from an intelligence perspective, that is the fingerprints of an intelligence operation. You purposefully use people or assets to cutouts. Exactly right, to obfuscate, to make it difficult to sort of pinpoint back to you. That's what you do. So I see this much more in the lines of this was a clear operation, and the Russians, look, that troll factory, the New York Times reported back on it on 2015. So this is something the Russians have been thinking, as Malcolm wrote in his book, have been thinking along for quite some time. And I think we're starting to sort of see how those pieces start to come to play.
Well, and Smith, I mean, Smith, what appears to be the case, and this is Smith talking to Shane Harris of the Wall Street Journal, that Smith is representing in these forays into the sort of Russian hacking underworld, and maybe he's getting rolled by hucksters. That's also possible. He's representing to them that he's in communication with Flynn, right?
Right, and you know, when a person talks like that, and this is old, you know, NSA analysis, when there's a conversation, your conversation tells me the conversation you had before us. Either he was in communication with Michael Flynn at some point, or felt he was empowered enough to believe that he was working for Michael Flynn. Also, off to the side, you have these...
Or, let me just say, or he's a liar, and he's trying to make himself seem like a bigger shot than he is.
Well, he is. Yeah, but this apparently has been corroborated by other U.S. intelligence or foreign intelligence, which may have intercepted, like I said, these militia hackers or criminal hackers or actual GRU FSB intelligence officers discussing how do we flood the field with this. Now, you got to remember something. Between that report in April and July, we had Guccifer 2.0, which was determined to be a Russian intelligence entity pretending to be a Romanian hacker. And then you have all these people, it appears, and certainly now we have a very solid one, of people flooding the field to get that information and to find the source so that they could use it against against Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, and we should note that Flynn, his lawyer, has asked for immunity, has said that he has quite a story to tell. He remains, it appears, the linchpin here. And, you know, he is also the only person, again, during this whole campaign, he's the single, Naveed, sort of nexus point of anyone with any kind of national security, real national security experience and chops who's close to candidate Trump.
That's exactly right. And just to sort of foot stomp on that non-attribution point, that can go both ways, right? I mean, potentially this idea, I sort of laugh at it that, you know, Donald Trump or, you know, the future president's going to sit down with the GRU officer. That probably didn't happen. But it doesn't mean that, you know, if you were going to have connections, as Malcolm very eloquently stated, the fact that the president announced these 30,000 emails, asked Russia to release them, there seems to have been some forethought, some knowledge that this potentially could be an avenue. I think that what you're going to start seeing is it's not a direct 1-2 step. There may be a 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're now starting to see the cast of characters
that might
come
involved in that.
from the president down back. That's exactly right.
I remember stories back in 2008. There was an apocryphal, quote, Whitey tape in which Michelle Obama was alleged to have said on tape something about Whitey.
Right.
And I heard stories about operatives from every single direction looking for this thing like the Ark, okay?
Right.
And I can imagine if you think that someone's got 30,000 of Clinton's emails, and that's the game changer, you can imagine the motivation you would feel.
Right. Flood the...
if you could get your hands on that. Naveed Jamali and Malcolm Nance, thanks to you both.
Thank you.
Next, Republicans are quick to distance themselves from the president after this morning's tweets, but his behavior is nothing new, and he